Forbidden love often grows in silence because it cannot exist openly in the outer world. When two people recognize a bond that circumstances refuse to permit, the emotion does not disappear. It simply withdraws from visibility. Society, family structures, personal commitments, or moral boundaries may stand firmly between them. These outer structures act like walls, but walls do not erase what the heart perceives. Instead, the feeling moves inward and becomes private. In this hidden space, every glance carries more meaning. Every brief conversation becomes charged with unspoken depth. The inability to declare affection publicly intensifies awareness. The lovers become cautious, measured, and deeply conscious of their own reactions. Silence becomes their language. It protects them from consequences, yet it also preserves the connection in a subtle way. What cannot be expressed through touch or promise is expressed through presence and restraint. The forbidden element does not weaken love. It refines it. It forces emotion to exist without possession, without public validation, without assurance of fulfillment. In many cases, this silent love feels stronger precisely because it must survive without support. It grows roots in imagination, memory, and longing rather than in shared plans or visible commitment. This inward turning creates emotional density. The individual may carry the feeling for years, speaking of it to no one, yet sensing its quiet influence on decisions and self-understanding. The silence becomes both burden and sanctuary. It is a burden because it demands constant self-control, and a sanctuary because it keeps something sacred from being reduced to ordinary routine. Forbidden love thrives in this paradox. It survives not by acting, but by enduring. In that endurance, it reveals how deeply human beings can feel while remaining outwardly composed, and how powerful emotions can shape a life even when they are never openly confessed. The psyche creates hidden attachments when conscious life denies expression. When a feeling is judged inappropriate, untimely, or impossible, the conscious mind attempts to dismiss it in order to maintain order and stability. Yet the inner world does not operate according to simple commands. What is pushed aside does not dissolve. It reorganizes itself in quieter, more subtle forms. A person may insist outwardly that nothing is there, that the bond is insignificant or imagined, while inwardly experiencing a persistent pull that cannot be rationally explained. This tension between what one allows oneself to feel and what one actually feels gives birth to a hidden attachment. It forms beneath the surface of daily behavior, influencing mood, attention, and even dreams. The beloved may appear unexpectedly in thought, not as a deliberate choice, but as an involuntary presence. This is because the psyche seeks wholeness, and when conscious life refuses to acknowledge an emotion, the unconscious begins to carry it. The attachment becomes layered with secrecy, not only from others, but from the self. One part of the personality remains committed to duty and structure, while another part quietly nurtures the bond. This division creates depth, but also strain. The more firmly the conscious mind denies expression, the more symbolic and intense the inner attachment may become. It can attach itself to small details, to memories, to imagined conversations that provide temporary relief. Such hidden bonds are not always about possession or fulfillment. Often, they are about recognition. The other person may represent qualities the individual longs to integrate within themselves. Because conscious life cannot give space to the relationship, the psyche creates its own private space where the connection can exist safely. In this way, the hidden attachment becomes both a refuge and a mirror. It reveals aspects of the self that are seeking acknowledgement. To understand this process is not to romanticize repression, but to recognize that the human mind does not simply obey rules imposed upon it. When love or attachment is denied expression, it does not vanish. It retreats inward, shaping the individual from within until it is either consciously integrated or slowly transformed into a deeper understanding of oneself. What is repressed does not disappear. It deepens and seeks symbolic expression. When a person decides that a feeling is unacceptable or dangerous, the first instinct is often to push it out of awareness. The mind may label it inappropriate, irrational, or harmful, and attempt to replace it with reason and control. Yet repression is not elimination. The emotion remains alive beneath the surface, and because it is denied a direct path, it searches for indirect forms of release. It may appear in dreams, where the forbidden bond is expressed through images rather than actions. It may emerge in sudden mood shifts, unexplained longing, or an unusual sensitivity to certain words or situations. These are not random occurrences, they are the psyche's attempt to balance itself. When conscious life suppresses an attachment, the unconscious compensates by giving it symbolic form. A person might find themselves idealizing the beloved, transforming them into a figure who represents hope, freedom, or a lost part of the self. The more intense the repression, the more powerful the symbolism may become. This does not mean the feeling grows unhealthy by nature, but it can become exaggerated if it remains entirely unacknowledged. The danger lies not in the emotion itself, but in the refusal to see it clearly. When we deny what we feel, we surrender control to hidden forces within us. But when we calmly admit the presence of the feeling, even if we choose not to act upon it, we reduce its need to disguise itself. Symbolic expression is a natural language of the inner world. It invites reflection rather than impulsive reaction. If one listens carefully to dreams, recurring thoughts, or emotional patterns, they may discover that the forbidden love is pointing towards something deeper, perhaps a longing for connection, creativity, or courage that has not yet been integrated into daily life. In this way, repression can become an opportunity for insight. The emotion that could not live openly in the outer world begins to teach from within, urging the individual to understand themselves more honestly. What is buried is not lost. It transforms, waiting patiently for conscious recognition. Silence can intensify emotional bonds rather than weaken them. When love cannot be spoken, it does not automatically fade. Instead, it often gathers strength in the quiet spaces where it is protected from interference. Words sometimes disperse emotion, but silence concentrates it. In the absence of open declaration, each shared moment becomes significant. A brief conversation may echo for days. A simple gesture may carry layers of meaning. Because there is no public acknowledgement, the individuals involved become highly attentive to subtle signals. They listen more carefully, observe more closely, and remember more vividly. This heightened awareness creates depth. The bond is no longer sustained by routine or constant contact, but by reflection and inner experience. Silence also prevents the relationship from being reduced to ordinary patterns of expectation and conflict. Without daily negotiations or social labels, the connection remains suspended in a delicate state of possibility. This can make it feel pure, even sacred, because it exists outside the ordinary structures that define most relationships. Yet this intensity comes at a cost. The lack of expression can create longing, uncertainty, and emotional tension. The mind may replay interactions repeatedly, searching for reassurance that the feeling is mutual. Still, within this restraint there is a form of devotion. To love silently requires discipline. It requires the ability to hold emotion without demanding immediate gratification. In doing so, the individual develops inner strength. They learn that affection does not always need outward confirmation to be real. The bond becomes internalized, shaping their thoughts and perceptions in subtle ways. Silence, therefore, is not emptiness but containment. It holds the feeling intact, preventing it from dissolving under external pressures. Over time, this quiet intensity can lead to deeper self-understanding. The individual begins to see how profoundly they are capable of attachment, even without possession. In this sense, silence does not diminish love, it distills it. It removes excess and leaves behind the essential recognition between two souls who may never speak their truth aloud, yet carry it with unwavering clarity within themselves. The beloved may represent an inner archetype rather than only a real person. When a relationship is forbidden and cannot unfold in ordinary ways, the imagination often begins to amplify the meaning of the other. The person becomes more than their visible personality. They begin to embody qualities that resonate deeply within the psyche. One may see in them courage that has not yet been expressed in oneself, tenderness that has long been suppressed, or freedom that feels distant in daily life. In this way, the attachment is not only directed outward, but also inward. The beloved becomes a mirror, reflecting unrealized aspects of the self. This does not mean the feeling is false or imagined. It means that human beings rarely love only the external figure. They love what that figure awakens within them. When circumstances forbid the relationship, the symbolic dimension becomes even stronger. Because there is limited shared experience to balance perception, the inner image grows vivid and layered. The psyche draws upon universal patterns, shaping the beloved into a figure of inspiration, longing, or transformation. Such figures resemble archetypes, timeless images that carry emotional power beyond individual biography. The individual may feel that meeting this person has altered their inner landscape, even if nothing outward has changed. The forbidden nature of the bond intensifies this symbolic process. Deprived of ordinary expression, the feeling seeks depth rather than expansion. It asks questions. What does this person awaken in me? What hidden part of myself responds so strongly to their presence? When one reflects honestly, the answer often reveals personal growth waiting to unfold. Perhaps the beloved represents independence, creativity, or emotional openness that the individual has neglected. In recognizing this, the silent love becomes a guide rather than a torment. It directs attention inward, toward integration and self-realization. The outer relationship may remain impossible, but the inner encounter remains meaningful. By understanding the archetypal dimension of attachment, one avoids both idealization and denial. The person is seen clearly as human, yet also acknowledged as a catalyst for inner development. In this way, forbidden love becomes not merely a private longing, but a profound invitation to know oneself more completely. Social, moral, or personal barriers often strengthen the tension of what is forbidden. When a boundary is clearly drawn by circumstance, it creates a defined line between what is permitted and what must remain restrained. This line generates psychological energy. The mind becomes acutely aware of the distance that cannot be crossed, and that very distance sharpens emotion. Barriers may arise from commitments already made, from family expectations, cultural traditions, or deeply held ethical principles. Each of these structures serves a purpose in maintaining order and responsibility in life. Yet, when genuine affection emerges within such limits, the individual experiences an internal conflict. One part honors loyalty and values stability. Another part feels the undeniable pull of connection. This tension does not necessarily lead to rebellion. In many cases, it leads to introspection. The individual begins to examine their own priorities, their sense of integrity, and the meaning of sacrifice. The forbidden element amplifies awareness because every thought and action must be measured. There is no careless indulgence, no impulsive expression without consequence. The barrier acts as both restraint and intensifier. It restrains outward behavior, but it intensifies inward experience. The heart may beat faster not because the feeling is reckless, but because it must remain controlled. Over time, this dynamic can cultivate maturity. The person learns that strong emotion does not grant automatic permission to act. They confront the complexity of adult life, where desire and duty do not always align. The presence of obstacles forces clarity. One must ask whether the feeling represents a passing attraction or something that reveals deeper truths about the self. Even when the decision is to respect the barrier fully, the emotional journey leaves its mark. It teaches discernment, responsibility, and the cost of choice. Barriers, therefore, are not merely external restrictions, they are psychological thresholds. How one responds to them shapes character. In honoring a boundary while acknowledging genuine feeling, the individual demonstrates strength. The tension may remain, but it becomes a conscious tension, integrated rather than denied. In this integration, the forbidden bond transforms from temptation into a profound lesson about integrity and inner balance. Inner conflict between duty and desire shapes the personality in lasting ways. When a person finds themselves loving in silence because the relationship is forbidden, they stand at the crossroads of two powerful forces. Duty speaks in the language of responsibility, loyalty, and consequence. Desire speaks in the language of longing, recognition, and emotional truth. Neither voice is insignificant. Both arise from meaningful parts of the self. The tension between them creates an internal dialogue that cannot easily be silenced. One may attempt to dismiss desire as weakness or to view duty as cold restriction, yet such simplifications fail to capture the depth of the struggle. In reality, this conflict becomes a defining moment in psychological development. The individual must decide how to act without betraying their core values. In doing so, they begin to understand who they truly are. If they choose duty, they do not necessarily erase desire. They learn to carry it with dignity. If they allow desire to influence them, they must accept the consequences with full awareness. Either path demands responsibility. The silent lover often grows through restraint. They discover that maturity involves more than following impulse. It requires reflection, patience, and the courage to face discomfort without immediate resolution. This internal struggle shapes character by forcing clarity. It exposes hidden motives, fears, and hopes. It reveals whether one seeks momentary fulfillment or long-term integrity. Over time, the conflict may soften, but its impact remains. The person emerges with deeper self-knowledge, having confronted the complexity of their own heart. Such experiences prevent a shallow understanding of love. They teach that emotion alone does not define identity. Choices do. The personality becomes stronger because it has endured contradiction. Instead of living in unconscious reaction, the individual becomes more deliberate, more aware of their inner landscape. In this way, the battle between duty and desire is not merely painful, it is formative. It molds the self into someone capable of holding opposing truths at once, capable of loving deeply while still standing firmly within chosen principles. True understanding requires integrating shadowed emotions instead of denying them. When love must remain unspoken because it is forbidden, it easily slips into the shadow, that hidden region of the psyche where disapproved feelings are stored. Many believe that by ignoring such emotions they will fade, yet what is placed in darkness often gains quiet power. It influences reactions, shapes perceptions, and colors other relationships without conscious awareness. Integration begins not with action, but with honesty. One must admit, without dramatizing or condemning, that the feeling exists. This acknowledgement does not require outward confession or reckless behavior. It requires inner clarity. By saying to oneself, "This is what I feel," the individual brings light into the shadow. Once illuminated, the emotion loses its compulsive force. It becomes something that can be reflected upon rather than something that secretly controls behavior. Integration also involves examining what the feeling reveals. Does it uncover unmet needs, neglected creativity, or a longing for deeper connection in life as a whole? When approached thoughtfully, forbidden love becomes a messenger rather than an enemy. It points toward areas of growth that demand attention. To deny it entirely would be to deny part of one's humanity. To be consumed by it would be to lose balance. The task is to hold the emotion with steadiness, neither suppressing nor indulging it blindly. In doing so, the personality becomes more whole. The shadow no longer operates in secrecy, and the individual gains freedom from inner contradiction. This process cultivates compassion toward oneself. It recognizes that complex feelings are not signs of moral failure, but signs of depth. Through integration, the silent love transforms into wisdom. It teaches that wholeness does not mean the absence of conflict, but the capacity to embrace every part of one's inner life with awareness. In that awareness, the forbidden bond no longer threatens identity. Instead, it becomes part of a broader journey towards psychological maturity and inner harmony. When love exists in silence because the relationship is forbidden, the experience transforms into a profound exercise in self-awareness. The emotion persists without outward expression, and in doing so, it teaches the individual about the subtle ways the heart influences the mind. Silent love is not passive. It is active within the inner world, shaping thoughts, moods, and decisions. Each encounter or memory becomes charged with significance, not because it is grand or dramatic, but because the mind invests it with meaning that would otherwise be taken for granted. The person learns to observe themselves with careful attention, noting the intensity of feeling without necessarily seeking its fulfillment. This observation cultivates patience, for one must accept that some desires will remain unfulfilled. It also cultivates discernment, as the individual distinguishes between fleeting impulse and enduring attachment. In this way, silent love functions as a mirror, revealing both the depth of feeling and the resilience required to navigate life responsibly. Forbidden love highlights the capacity of humans to experience profound connection even without conventional acknowledgement. It reminds us that the heart is not bound by social rules, though the conscious self must navigate them with care. This duality between inner experience and outer restraint becomes a crucible for character development. The individual learns to carry longing without resentment, to acknowledge desire without guilt, and to respect boundaries without denying their own emotional reality. Over time, this cultivated self-awareness strengthens empathy, allowing one to perceive the emotions of others more clearly and respond with insight rather than reaction. Silent love, therefore, is not merely an unspoken attachment, it is a teacher. It demonstrates that relationships do not always require articulation to be meaningful, and that emotional depth can exist independently of outward validation. By embracing this reality, the individual develops a richer understanding of themselves and of human nature. They come to see that love, even when constrained, contributes to the unfolding of consciousness and the refinement of the inner life. It is in the careful attention to these hidden feelings that the self grows in maturity, recognizing both the power of emotion and the necessity of wisdom in guiding action. Through this integration, silent love evolves from a source of private tension into a wellspring of insight and psychological resilience. Sometimes, the most profound lessons of love are learned not through possession, but through restraint. When a relationship is forbidden and affection must remain unspoken, the individual encounters a unique form of emotional education. In these circumstances, love is experienced internally, shaping the psyche without demanding outward fulfillment. Each thought, memory, and fleeting encounter becomes a site of reflection. As the person examines what this feeling reveals about themselves, they learn to distinguish between the impulse to act and the wisdom of waiting, between desire and responsibility. The forbidden nature of the relationship intensifies awareness, forcing attention towards subtle emotional cues and inner responses that might otherwise be overlooked. In this way, silent love is not weakness, it is disciplined feeling. The individual discovers that true attachment can exist without immediate gratification, and that the depth of emotion does not require public acknowledgement to be valid. Over time, this quiet devotion fosters resilience, patience, and an expanded capacity for empathy. One begins to recognize that others carry their own hidden emotional struggles, and that understanding arises from both personal experience and reflection on universal patterns of attachment. The silence of the forbidden bond transforms into a teacher of inner strength, illustrating that love is as much about self-knowledge as it is about connection with another. It also illuminates the importance of integrating the shadow, those parts of the psyche that experience longing, tension, and unfulfilled desire. By acknowledging these emotions without allowing them to dictate impulsive action, the individual achieves a balance between inner life and outward behavior. This balance cultivates a sense of wholeness, demonstrating that fulfillment is not always external. In essence, silent love offers the opportunity to experience emotion fully while maintaining moral and social integrity. It becomes a lens through which one can observe the interplay of desire, restraint, and self-understanding. The individual learns that some connections, though forbidden, leave enduring impressions that contribute to personal growth and psychological maturity. Even without physical or verbal expression, love continues to shape thoughts, inspire reflection, and guide ethical decision-making. Through careful attention to these hidden feelings, one cultivates insight into the complexity of human emotion and the subtle ways in which devotion can exist without action. In this manner, the silent, forbidden love becomes both a mirror and a teacher, revealing the depth of the heart and the capacity of the mind to carry affection with wisdom, dignity, and enduring clarity.